My name's Gillian Polack. My essay is called The Guardian, A Tale by an Australian. Who was Anna Bunn and why is she so important? Why does the National Library of Australia keep photocopies of letters, press cuttings and even recipes by her? And how does a place she lived in as an adult create a narrative parallel to a particular kind of young adult science fiction story? Anna Maria Murray was born in 1808 and came to Australia with her father in 1827 as part of a family of free settlers. Terence Murray, her father, was one of the many who had retired from the army and was looking for a new life. The family found their new life near Penrith, on land leased from someone who had once commanded her father. This was life in that time, small social circles maintained carefully. She met Captain George Bunn and married. Her husband died a few years later, leaving her in debt, but with land. This is when things become interesting for the history of speculative fiction. Anna Maria Bunn anonymously published The Guardian, a Tale, a Gothic novel set in Ireland and England. Bunn's family was Irish, which probably explains the dual location. The novel was first published and actually printed on mainland Australia, and she was the first Australian woman to have a novel published. The first Australian novel actually published here was printed in Hobart in 1831. I need to put together a list of all the firsts I'm documenting because I'm pretty positive that the various claimants are using words with great precision to explain how important their particular author was. Gothic novel, female writer, 1838. These are the important bits for Mrs. Bunn. I've wanted to be a writer since I was very young. And when I was 8, I didn't say I want to be a novelist, I want to be a non-fiction writer, I want to be a poet, I want to write essays. I just want to be a writer. So since then, I've explored a lot of things, and one of the things that I've loved is essay writing. So I've said I would like to write essays if I can, not instead of being a novelist, but as well as being a novelist. This particular one was because I take photographs for my research, for my writing and for teaching. And so I was a friend gave me a lift around to places I want to photograph. And I realised that where I live, which is Canberra, the capital of Australia, has a really interesting writing history that no one ever talks about. And you can't talk about every single bit of writing history in a single essay. You've got to choose one theme and stick to it. So I looked around and thought, what's really interesting that no one has talked about in my presence in the 28 years I'd been in the city at that stage? And that was the fact that the first Gothic novel published on mainland Australia was published in Sydney, but came from the Canberra region. And I'm a science fiction writer, so I'm an inheritor of the Gothic novel. I thought, what an odd parallel. And so the essay explored that. It was just so interesting that I had to write it. The first thing I do is find my big idea. In this case, it was this interesting writer who I hadn't heard of, even though I should have known. And so I explored that. Then I do research. I am an historian. I have a PhD in history. That makes the research a lot easier because I know where to look, what to look for. And I piece together the story of something. There are many ways of telling that story, many ways of telling that story. So I keep my eye on the hook I thought of at first, on the original idea, and explore it from that point of view and pull everything together to make a narrative. And then I start writing. To make the essay easier to write, the very first thing I do every single time is find something I care about. I care about so many things, but if I find I've been asked to do essays on other people's topics, and they're much harder. So when I'm given a topic that I have to write to, I look at it and think, can I find an approach that matters to me? Can I write it so that it counts for me personally? And every single essay I've written with that in mind is better than every other essay I write. Not all my essays work out. So sometimes my mind thinks very logically, and sometimes it jumps from this place to the other. So what I do with my essays sometimes is I work out ideas in order and write them in order. And so I actually plan it paragraph by paragraph. Other times I say I've got this theme and I follow what feels logical, and then I check it afterwards to make sure I haven't done anything stupid. And sometimes I have to delete a paragraph because I've gone off on a tangent. And other times, and this is the best tool tip I can give, I've written a mess. We all do it sometimes. So what I do with that mess is read it and say what's important here, and reorder the ideas so they make sense, so I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I look at everything carefully and say, this is what the essay's about. Have I got a good beginning? Does it move to somewhere logical after that? And the essay I read you a section of is a good example of an essay which I had a lot of trouble with. It wasn't that one of the easy ones to write. It didn't just flow. I had to go through it 2 or 3 times and reorder things to make sense of it and leave some things out and add others. So the trick is, the easy way of doing that is to read it do a printout of it and read it with a pen in hand and say the biggest first idea where you explain everything, that's 1. The logical thing after that is 2. And I just number everything, and if the 3 doesn't follow the 4, but the 4 should come up, then I can see and just renumber it. By putting numbers on it, I can see it in order more easily. Okay, normally I write very quickly, so an essay like that would take me about an hour, but I do a lot of thinking before I sit down and write. I'd like to give you a name of an essay writer, because the vast majority of his essays are magic. They're the ones that convinced me I could never be an essay writer because I could never write that well. And that's J.B. Priestley and Tolkien on fairy stories. That's a beautiful, beautiful essay. So anything by J.B. Priestley, and on fairy stories by Tolkien. This is the Lord of the Rings Tolkien. He was also an essayist, and he wrote the most beautiful essays. Don't listen to Australians that offer you Vegemite on toast, because you should try. I don't know. That's embarrassing. There's not one thing. It's like having. I recommended a whole book of essays. I don't think of one thing easily. I'm sorry. Oh, The Babadook.
Okay.
It made it to Hollywood, but it was an Australian movie. Yes, it's Babaddook. I'd like to give a shout out to Aurealis, because they publish every year a few pieces by me, and I love writing them.